We are going to be working on Discharge, but not as a full color design. We are going to be using Discharge specifically as the underbase for Plastisol on top. We had a video release recently in which I was talking to John McGee, and we were going over all the great ways you guys can print with Discharge, both as experienced printers and as beginners. One of the designs that we showed there was this one. I printed it up before we went to Long Beach to show off as a sample. Now we're on press, and we're going to show you how we accomplished that print sample. Now again, we were talking about intro ways to get used to doing Discharge within a multicolor design. It's relatively simple. Instead of printing your white base, throw in the Discharge ink and try it out. As we go through here, we'll tell you the nuances that you want to pay attention to in order to get the best out of your print and a wash-fast print once it exits the dryer. So we are going to be printing on all made black 100% cotton shirts. Whenever you're doing Discharge, it's really important to choose a garment where those dyes will break down and disappear in the discharge process. We've done videos in the past that explained how that process works in depth, but for here, we're just going to talk about choosing a garment that has a high dischargeability rating. Today, we're printing with the Zodiac Aquarius Discharge Base, and I've added about 5% activator to it. You'll find most shirts will discharge well between 4 and 6% activator. As always, test your fabric before you run production. So this is a 4-screen design. Very simply looks like a CMYK reproduction of a piece of art, but instead of CMYK inks, we're using the Rio Ready for Use inks. This is Rio National Red. I think I did custom mix the blue. It was a few weeks ago. And then this is lemon yellow and then black at the end. I did add some extender base to the black to thin it out, get it to be a little bit more like a CMYK black, and we'll take a look at how it looks at the end. So very simply, once you have your ink mixed up, make sure you let it sit long enough for the discharge agent to disperse properly into the discharge base, and throw it into your screen. Well, maybe don't throw it into your screen. Place it in carefully. Always keep your water-based inks covered. I'm going to warm up my platen a little more. As you can see, it's a little chilly here. The honeycomb platens tend to cool off pretty quick. One of the first things that you want to pay attention to when you're doing your discharge underbase with Plastisol on top, you want to pay attention to the evaporative nature of the inks. Have a spray bottle on hand so that you can wet it down and rehydrate those inks as needed. When we go through the print procedures, we want to try and drive that ink into the fabric as best we can. Doesn't mean using a hard squeegee, it just means using a little bit more physical force to get that ink into the shirt and not have it lay on top as much as possible. So I'm going to do a flood. Light flood back just so I have all my ink down there. And then I have a lot of body weight pushed into this. Hard pull. Now it's hard to see. The heat from the platen is helping to evaporate the ink a little bit. We can see a little bit of discoloration happening already because of the warmth of the platen. So we're going to throw this underneath the flash unit, and we want to make sure we get full evaporation of the water before we print any Plastisol on top of it. When I printed this shirt to bring it to Long Beach to talk about discharge in the Ryonet booth, I did this a couple of times. Now, it was the 3rd time I had ever done discharge as an underbase. Previous 2 times turned out great, but I was also on an automatic press using quartz flashes and all the rest of it. So I ended up doing this. I didn't let the ink actually dry enough on a few of my prints. So as I go over here to touch this, it still feels a little humid in places. I don't want that. Any water that's still staying on top of that shirt or in that shirt can end up being interference to letting the Plastisol inks fall on top. So I'm going to flash this a little bit longer. And what happens when you have the Plastisol doesn't bond to the shirt properly because there's water there, it'll fall off in the wash and it looks like your shirt's under-cured. And it's not technically under-cured, but it is not bonded properly to the fabric. Got a nice, slightly smelly reaction going on. That's the sulfur coming off of the print. So I'm gonna go ahead and start in through my print order. This is a little sim process print, so I'm gonna do a flood and a print. One of the things you'll notice as you print is colors are gonna develop a little differently. If you've got something that looks, again, sim processing, you see a lot of color development happening, it'll end up being a little different over an underbase like this. And that's it. As you can see, it doesn't have full color development right now. Once the garment goes through the dryer, that's where that magic is really gonna start to show and shine through. All right, I'm gonna run this through the dryer. So we're using the Aeolus dryer by BBC. Fantastic dryer. One of the, if not the best, electric forced air dryers in the industry right now. I have my settings. The times is 1:45 in the tunnel. What we need to do because we're using a discharge base or standard water-based ink, we need to make sure that one, not only does that ink fully evaporate, but we have that shirt in there long enough for the resins in that water base, the discharge ink, to fully cure. That means that we have to treat this primarily Plastisol print just like we would if it was a water-based print. That means full evaporation, get that ink layer up to cure, which is 300, 320, and then hold there to make sure that it all cures. If that water-based ink isn't cured when it comes out, that Plastisol, again, is on top of it and it will fall out. That's the simplified answer. Down there at the bottom, as you can see the Ryonet and Wilflex coming out, nice and bright. That is the shirt color itself that the discharge base discharged to. The Rio inks on top do look a little shiny. They got hot, but once that goes through the wash, that's gonna dull out pretty good. When you're printing your discharge base and you leave the screen flooded for too long a period of time, you can get some areas that will close up. It's okay to pull the squeegee 1 or 2 more times to get it to clear up. So how do I know when your base is flashed enough? It's not just color change, because over here you can see that it's a little bit darker than it is on this side. This is the fact that I'm putting my platen under the flash in one direction and pulling it back from that same direction. So this side gets a little bit more heat in the process. When I put my hand on it and I feel no residual moisture, it's flashed. Now I don't want to leave this here and walk away and come back later because there's residual chemistry in here that's keeping things wet that I don't want to evaporate out. Now, is discharge base the only thing that we can use in this process to create a super soft underbase for the Plastisol print on top? It's not. There's another product you can use called Plasticharge. We also have our own version here at Ryonet called Ryonet. Go ahead and mix it up as normal with the same percentage of activator, put it in your screen and print as normal. Flash, print your Plastisol on top, and then cure. The difference with Plasticharge is it doesn't have anything in that ink that technically needs to cure, meaning there's no resins in here to bind to the fabric. Plasticharge is designed to fully evaporate out, leaving nothing behind. So in a way, it's actually a better version of a discharge to use than the discharge base. But again, remember, we are also doing a test for proper cure and usage of discharge inks. If you do this incorrectly with your Plastisol, your standard discharge prints are not going to end up curing properly. So this is a great litmus test. Now, are there any drawbacks to using Plasticharge? Basically none. Because you don't have to worry about the garment being in the dryer as long to cure the water base, all you need to do is make sure that ink is completely evaporated, and then all the Plastisol on top has a chance to cure properly. As always, do a wash test, confirm you're doing things right, make notes on what you're doing so you can repeat it next time. Now I'm going to continue on with the rest of this print. To recap, we're using the Zodiac Aquarius Discharge Base as an underbase for Plastisol on top, specifically the Rio inks. We are running it through an Aeolus dryer for 1 minute and 45. Cure temperatures in there are hitting about 340 to 350 by the time the garment exits the dryer. While using Discharge Base is a wonderful introduction to printing discharge and accomplishing a fantastic discharge print, it's not the only way to achieve that. You can also use Plasticharge. Thank you very much for joining us today. Hopefully we showed you something that was new or something that you're interested in adding to your arsenal of screen printing techniques that you can turn around and make money on. If you have any deeper questions on what we did here today, throw a comment down below. As always, thank you very much. Please like and subscribe if you like what we're doing here. See you guys in the next one. Stop working down there. I have things I want to do.